Welcome to the Man of Recaps. This is the full series recap of Breaking Bad. Meet Walter White, a mild-mannered high school chemistry teacher. He's got a loving wife, Skylar, a son, Walt Jr. He's rich in love, but poor in money. He's got to work part-time at the car wash just to make ends meet. Today's his 50th birthday, and he gets some bad news. He's got the lung cancer. And it's a bad one. He's likely to be dead in the next 6 months, so now's the time for a midlife crisis. His brother-in-law, Hank Schrader, is a DEA agent who just seized a ton of money from a small-time meth lab. For their next bust, Walt goes on a ride-along, and by random chance sees one of the meth cooks escaping, and it's none other than his former student, Jesse Pinkman. Walt tracks him down like, hey, I'm not gonna turn you in. I want us to cook meth together.
But you know the business, and I know the chemistry.
So they buy a used RV and go out to the desert, the perfect mobile meth lab. By the way, cooking meth stinks, you gotta take off your good clothes, and that's why you see the famous scene of Walt in his tighty whities. Now Jesse flunked chemistry, he was going by the name Captain Cook and adding in chili powder, but for Mr. White, making crystal meth is just basic chemistry, and his batch is the best Jesse's ever seen. But when Jesse tries to sell it, things immediately go wrong. Crazy 8 and his cousin want to steal Walt's formula and then kill him. So to survive, Walt cooks up an explosive poisonous gas.
Yes, science!
One of the drug dealers, Crazy 8, survives, so Walt and Jesse flip a coin to see who's gonna kill him. And it comes up Walt. He doesn't want to do it, but realizes he has to, so in 2 days of being a criminal, Walt has killed 2 people. Jesse, meanwhile, was in charge of dissolving the bodies. Mr. White told him to get a plastic container, but he couldn't find one big enough, so he figured his bathtub would do just fine. Unfortunately, the acid eats right through the ceramic bathtub. Yeah, that's gonna bring down property value. Walter is scarred by this whole situation and wants to walk away, but the money's really good and cancer treatment is really expensive. And Walter's got some serious hang-ups about money. His old best friend and partner is loaded now after the company that he and Walt founded is huge. Unfortunately, because of a personal thing with the girl, Walter sold out years ago for practically nothing. Elliot offers to pay for Walter's cancer treatment, but Walter refuses to accept charity. So Walter's cooking meth again, but they could make a lot more money if they sell wholesale to a distributor, Tuco Salamanca. Tuco loves this high-quality meth, and it seems like an easy deal, but Tuco's an unhinged psychopath, decides to just beat up Jesse and steal the meth. Now, Walt loses his hair from the chemo, and so armed with a badass shaved head, he confronts Tuco. He's like, you're gonna give me my money, or I blow us all up, and boom, some sort of chemistry explosion.
Yes, science!
Tuco's like, whoa, I like you, man, you're crazy, and Walt comes up with a fake name for his hardcore alter ego.
Heisenberg.
Yes, legendary gangster Heisenberg is born. So they work out a deal selling to Tuco, but their production is limited. Normally to cook meth, you just buy a bunch of cold pills, but there's only so much you can buy without raising suspicion. Walter knows a better ingredient that they could get a ton of, only problem is they gotta steal it. They burn through the locked door with some chemistry stuff.
Yes, science!
They steal a giant barrel of this stuff so they can make tons of meth, and as a side effect, it turns blue, which is better than ever. So they're raking in the dough, things look good, except of course Tuco's a psycho who beats his own friend to death for no reason. Jesse and Walt agree Tuco's gotta go, but they're no hardcore gangsters. Walt though knows some beans that he can turn into a poison called ricin. Before they can use it though, the DEA finds Tuco's bodies and are on the hunt for him. So Tuco kidnaps Walt and Jesse and they hide out at his uncle Hector Salamanca's house. Tuco's not planning to kill them, but who knows what he's gonna do at any given moment. Walt's got the ricin with him and this old man seems pretty out of it, so he tries to sneak it in Tuco's burrito. But Uncle Salamanca sees more than he lets on. He uses his little bell to warn Tuco about the poison. Things are looking grim, but our boys manage to escape. And just then, Hank shows up. Walt's been missing for over a day now, and Skylar had seen Jesse once. Walt told her that he was selling him some cancer marijuana. So Hank tracked down Jesse's car, only to find Tuco Salamanca. They have a shootout, and boom, takes him down. When Walt gets home, he goes naked grocery shopping. He's like, oh my god, I must have blacked out. He calls it a fugue state, and the doctors agree it's not really a thing. Jesse gets arrested, but comes up with a pretty good alibi. Uncle Salamanca could turn him in, but he's an old school cartel guy. He'd rather poop his pants than talk to the DEA. Now on the cancer front, Walt gets some great news. He's in remission. Unfortunately, all the money he's made so far barely covers his medical bills, so he and Jesse are back to cooking. This time, Jesse brings in his trusted friends to help him sell, Combo, Badger, and Skinny Pete. That goes real well for a bit, but if people aren't scared of you, meth heads will just jack your stuff instead of paying. Jesse tracks him down and tries to be scary, and of course they've already done all the drugs and spent all the money. But they do have an ATM that they stole. Of course they can't get it open. This couple is arguing constantly, and finally the woman pushes the ATM, crushing her dude's head. Now Jesse's pretty scarred by this. Honestly, he's a gentle soul. But word on the street is it was Jesse who crushed this guy's head because he's working for the hardcore new gangster Heisenberg. Walt's happy to let this story spread. In fact, Heisenberg's become somewhat of a legend. This blue meth coming out of nowhere, leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. And so with their new street cred, all of Santa Fe is their territory. Walt and Jesse are cooking up a storm. These are the glory days. Even when Jesse leaves the keys in the ignition and strands them in the desert with no water, Walt uses his crazy chemistry skills to jumpstart the motor.
Yes, science!
But the problem with expanding is you draw more attention and Badger gets arrested. And where do you turn when you need legal help? Better call Saul. Saul Goodman's the fast-talking sleazy lawyer from the cheesy commercials, and he's just the guy you want.
You don't want a criminal lawyer, right? You want a criminal lawyer.
After an initial misunderstanding in the desert, Saul Goodman's hired to represent the team. And Saul knows a guy who can help him make way more money. It's Gus Fring, mild-mannered owner of Los Pollos Hermanos. But he secretly runs a huge meth empire. Gus only works with reliable partners, so as a test he sets up a deal right now. Unfortunately, Jesse is not so reliable these days. Jesse's renting a new apartment from hot landlord and neighbor Jane. Long story short, they start dating and very quickly fall in love. Only problem is she's a recovering addict. One day it's like, yeah, I can do a little meth, and then it's like, hey, let's do heroin. Jesse's never done heroin before, and it's a doozy. Don't do drugs, kids. Walt's gotta do the drug deal himself. Just then, Walt's wife is going into labor. Yeah, beautiful daughter Holly, but Walt missed her birth because he was doing the deal, and he blames Jesse. He's not giving him his half of the money until he cleans up. Unfortunately, heroin is very addictive, so Jane blackmails Walt into giving them Jesse's half of the money. They're like, look, we're not gonna spend this on drugs. We're gonna move to New Zealand and become artists. But we may as well finish off the heroin we already have, right? Walt comes by later to talk and finds them out of it again. Just then, Jane starts overdosing and Walt has to save her, but wait, this is awful, but maybe it's for the best if I just let her die. It'll motivate Jesse to get cleaned up and it's not really murder, I'll just pretend like I wasn't here. And so Walt let this poor girl die. That's despicable, Walt, you should feel bad. And poor Jesse is heartbroken. This is the first time we meet Mike Ehrmantraut. He's a grumpy old grandpa type, but he's a very skilled fixer. He keeps Jesse out of jail and gets him to rehab. Then turns out Jane's father is an air traffic controller, and distracted by grief of his daughter's death, he causes a mid-air collision. Oh, Walt, that one girl you didn't kill? Now the death toll's about 200. Walt does have a ton of money now, but his marriage is suffering. Skylar knows Walt's keeping secrets from her, and finally she's had enough. She's kicking him out. Every attempt to win her back is shut down. That's how the pizza famously ends up on the roof. Finally, he comes clean. I've been cooking meth, but I've done it all for the family. Skylar is not okay with this, but she's not gonna break up the family by turning him in. So she starts an affair with her boss, and she's like, yeah, now we're even. Meanwhile, Hank and the DEA are chasing down this blue meth. He gets dangerously close to finding the RV, so Walt and Jesse have to destroy it. End of an era. Luckily, Gus Fring owns an industrial laundromat with a brand spanking new meth lab in the basement. He has a new partner in mind for Walt, expert chemist Gale, who's an even bigger nerd than Mr. White. But Walt's not feeling it. He wants Jesse. Even though they have a sometimes rocky relationship, there's no one else he trusts more. So now the boys are cooking industrial quantities of meth, going out through Gus's well-oiled nationwide distribution system. But remember, most of the drug business is not so friendly. The Mexican cartels are likely to make a severed head turtle bomb, and the cartel's deadliest enforcers, the murder twins, are after Heisenberg. Walter has no idea how close he came to death. They were called away at the last second by Gustavo Fring. The murder twins want vengeance for their cousin Tuco, but Gus is like, hey, I have a partnership with Walter right now. The guy who actually killed Tuco is DEA agent Hank Schrader. He gets shot a couple times, but before they can finish him off, he takes him out. Hank survives, but he's likely to never walk again unless he gets the very expensive physical therapy. Skylar's like, it's no problem. We're actually rich now. We're gonna pay for it. She cooks up this story that's basically the truth, except instead of cooking meth, Walt was counting cards at blackjack. And now armed with this story, they can finally start spending some of their money. And of course, you need to launder your money by mixing the drug profits into a legitimate business. Saul's a big fan of laser tag, but Skylar's got a more more believable idea to buy the car wash that Walt used to work at. So now the money's rolling in and Walt and Skylar have no more secrets. The marriage is back on. Jesse's also got a new girlfriend. She's got a son, Brock, and Jessie loves kids. But her older son is actually dealing meth for their organization. Jesse's not okay with kids dealing drugs, so they make a deal to cut him loose. But his handlers cut him loose by killing him. Jesse's gonna kill these guys and die in the process, unless he's saved by Mr. White, running these guys over with his nerdy dad car. He's like, don't worry, Jesse, I got your back. Now, Gus is very unhappy. He likes a nice, quiet, drama-free meth empire. He forces Walt to cook with Gale for a while, with the intention of killing Walt and having Gale take over. But Walt saw this coming, so before they can kill him, he has Jesse go and shoot Gale. Now Gus needs them. He can't kill them if he wants to keep producing the blue meth, so he kills this other random guy just to show how mad he is. Walt figures they're not fully out of danger. They may have to kill Gus one day. He makes some more of the ricin poison and has Jesse hide it in a cigarette just in case. The cops find Gale's body and Hank talks about it at dinner, so Skylar's like, wait a minute, Walt, do you know him? Are you in danger? And he comforts her in the least comforting way possible.
I am not in danger, Skylar. I am the danger. A guy opens his door and gets shot and you think that of me? No. I am the one who knocks.
Yes, such a badass line. Unfortunately, it doesn't comfort Skylar. She's terrified of him now, and any chance of rekindling their marriage is off the table. Cops also found Gale's lab notebook, which Hank shows to Walt because he's a chemistry guy. There's an inscription in there to WW.
Walter White? You got me.
Hank, you're so close, but it's actually Gale was a big Walt Whitman poetry fan. Now, after killing Gale in cold blood, Jesse's feeling bad again, goes on kind of a nihilism bender, so Mike Ehrmantraut takes Jesse on some ride-alongs to give him something to do. By the way, Mike is not just a random fixer, he's actually Gus Fring's head of security and a total badass. Most of the job, though, is pretty boring.
So we wait. Sorry to burst your bubble, kid, but that's 90% of the job.
Things get exciting, though, when Gus almost goes to war with the Mexican cartel. He takes Jesse with him down to Mexico to smooth things over and brings a bottle of tequila as a gift. Gus drinks first to prove it's not poisoned, but then he barfs it all up because it definitely was poisoned. And it's not just business, it's part of a 20-year revenge plot. When Gus and his brother first started working for the cartel, they killed his brother just to send a message. So now 20 years later, Gus has revenge. The guy who shot his brother was Hector Salamanca, the old man in the wheelchair, so Gus hates him most of all.
Now, the Salamanca name dies with you.
Around this time, Jesse proves that he can cook just as well as Mr. White now. Gus would love to kill Walt and have Jesse take over, but even though things between Jesse and Walt are on the rocks again, Jesse still stands by his former partner and is like, no, I won't let you kill him. So Gus takes Walt to the desert to let him know he's fired, but Walt assumes he's still on the hit list and so hatches a plan. Jesse really likes his new girlfriend and her son Brock, but one day Brock has a mysterious illness and Jesse searches his cigarette packs. The ricin is gone! He confronts Mr. White, assuming it was him getting revenge on Jesse for taking his job. But Walt's like, yo, Jesse, I would never do that to you. This is Gus trying to trick you into killing me. So Jesse agrees to help Walt kill Gus. He knows one of the only times Gus is undefended is when he's taunting old Hector Salamanca. So Walt's like, hey, old man, how would you like to get revenge? So next time Gus comes to visit him, he's dinging his bell, which is hooked up to a homemade bomb, and boom, Gus is exploded.
Yes, science!
Walt and Jesse destroy the laundry lab because Hank was actually getting way too close to figuring it out, and our boys have come out on top. Walt and Jesse closer than ever now. Turns out Brock recovers. In fact, it wasn't the ricin at all. It was this random plant called Lily of the Valley, which grows in Mr. White's backyard. That's right, Walt manipulated the whole thing. He had Saul pickpocket the cigarette, and Walt hides the real ricin in his house. Then he uses some salt to make a fake ricin cigarette and hides it in Jesse's Roomba. So Walt manipulated poor Jesse by poisoning a kid. Mike's gonna kill Walt as revenge for Gus, but they have a mutual problem right now. The lab is completely destroyed, but there were security cameras feeding back to Gus's laptop. The boys come up with a crazy plan to destroy the evidence involving a giant magnet.
Yeah, bitch! Magnets!
So with Gus dead, Walt is ready to be the man in the meth business. They gotta find a new place to cook, and they choose the craziest one of all, inside houses that are being bug bombed. These pest guys are criminals anyway, so they're happy to be in on it. And Walt and Jesse are back to cooking in a mobile meth lab inside people's living rooms. It's actually kind of genius. And now the money is really rolling in. Walt starts to enjoy life. Now Gus worked with a giant mega corporation, Madrigal, who owned Pollos Hermanos. Their contact person was uptight businesswoman Lydia.
I would like a cup of hot water, filtered, if possible, and a single slice of lemon. And I'm assuming you don't have stevia. Never mind. I brought my own.
She's normally able to sneak them some methylamine, but now the feds are watching everything. She's got a crazy backup plan, though, for the boys to rob a train. They siphon off a ton of methylamine and replace it with water so no one knows. They bring in one of the pest control guys to help. It's Todd. He seems like a nice kid. They pull it off just in time, and it was a huge success. Except this random kid saw them, and Todd shoots him with no hesitation. Yeah, Todd's a hilarious character. He's a very nice guy, but yeah, kind of a psychopath, I guess? But murdering a kid leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth. Mike and Jesse want to just quit, sell the methylamine they stole, and retire. Jesse goes to Walt's house to talk it over. When Skylar comes home, Jesse's invited to stay for dinner, but Walt and Skylar are in a very rough patch, so that's where this hilarious awkward dinner meme comes from. But Walt has no interest in retirement. In fact, he expands the business bigger than ever.
Say my name.
Heisenberg.
You're goddamn right.
Yes, Heisenberg is back! Walt buys Mike out of the business, though, including enough to pay off 9 guys in jail from Gus's operation to keep them from flipping. But during a money drop, the lawyer is caught red-handed, which then leads the feds to Mike. So Mike's gotta leave town, but Walt's like, hey, if we're not paying those guys in prison to stay quiet anymore, we're gonna have to kill them. But Mike wants no part of that. But Walt saw that coming and took Mike's gun and shoots him. No, Mike was awesome. He had a granddaughter. Walt, you're out of control. So Todd has an uncle that's head of a white supremacist gang, and Walt hires them to murder these guys in prison, and they have to kill all the guys in different prisons at the exact same time so no one sees it coming. That's some real Godfather stuff right there. Now Jesse is done with all the violence. He retires too, but now with no partners to split profits, it's all going to Walt, and soon he's got an absurd amount of money. It's more than a car wash could launder in a lifetime. And Walt's cancer is back, so Walt figures it's a good time to retire and spend his remaining years happily with his family. But one day, while Hank's on the pooper, he grabs some reading material, a book of Walt Whitman poems, with an inscription in it from Gail to Walt. So Hank figures it out. His brother-in-law is Heisenberg. This makes things awkward at family gatherings, but Hank can't arrest Walt yet without more proof. So Walt's gotta hide his money. He hires Saul's guys to help, including his big bodyguard Huel, who famously takes a nap on the giant bed of cash. With the DEA closing in, Jesse's gonna leave town. Saul knows a guy who can give you a totally new identity. But right before he leaves, the whole Ryson situation clicks into place. Jesse figures out that Saul stole the cigarette and Walt manipulated him, including poisoning a kid. Oh, Jesse's mad now. He's gonna burn Walt's house down. But Hank gets there just in time, and Jesse's in a mood to testify.
You can't keep getting away with it!
So Jesse tells them the whole crazy story, but without evidence, it's just hearsay. So they hatch a crazy plan to tell Huel that Walt's on a murder spree, stage a Jesse death photo with some ground beef. So Huel starts talking. He doesn't know where the money is, but he knows it's buried in the desert. So they send Walt a staged photo, pretend they got his cash, and you bet that gets him running straight to it. When Walt realizes it was a setup, he thinks Jesse's coming to kill him, so he calls Todd's uncle to come save his butt. But when Walt sees Jesse was working with Hank, Walt's gotta call it off. He was talking very openly with Jesse on the phone, and he implicated himself in everything. So Walt was outplayed, and he is under arrest until Uncle Jack shows up, and there's an epic shootout. In the end, Hank is outgunned, and Walt's like, don't kill him, this is my brother-in-law. But Hank's like, Walt, you did this. And oh, Hank is shot dead. Jack's gang figures out Walt's got his money buried here, and they take it all, except they leave him with one barrel, cause, you know, fair's fair. They're gonna kill Jesse too, but Todd's like, hey, actually, we could use him. Since Walt's retirement, Todd's the best cook they've got, but he can't make that meth blue. So they lock Jesse up and keep him as a meth cook slave. One night, he almost escapes, so Todd kills Jesse's girlfriend, and they'll threaten to kill Brock too if he ever tries it again. When Walt makes it home, he's like, hey family, time to go. But when Skylar realizes he killed Hank, that's crossed a line. They have a big argument, and now his family has totally turned on him. So Walt's all alone, heading off to get a new identity. Saul Goodman's getting a new identity too.
I'm lucky, month from now, best case scenario, I'm managing a Cinnabon in Omaha.
You could see some of that and his history in the amazing spin-off prequel Better Call Saul. Link in the description for those recaps. Meanwhile, Walt is hiding out in a cabin in the woods. He's still got about $10 million that he tries to send his family, but they want nothing to do with him. So Walt pays a visit to Gretchen and Elliot, his rich friends from season 1. He gives them the rest of his cash and tells them to put it in a blind trust for his son. If they don't, he'll have them assassinated. Of course, his assassins are just Badger and Skinny Pete with laser pointers. And then it's Walt's 52nd birthday. Exactly 2 years after the series started, Walt has lost everything and is in fact about to die from cancer. He tracks down Skyler to apologize. He finally admits that maybe he started cooking meth for the family, but he kept doing it because he liked it. Then he goes to see Lydia and Todd, who have been keeping the business going, but he grabbed the ricin from his old house and poisoned Lydia with her stevia. Then he goes to see Uncle Jack, who's of course just gonna kill him, but not before he lets him see Jesse, who's spent the better part of a year as a meth cook slave. Walt tackles him to the ground like they're fighting, but really he pops the trunk and he's got a giant gun jerry-rigged on a rotating thing, takes out the whole gang.
Yes, science!
Then Jesse's gonna kill Walt, but Walt's like, hey, honestly, I deserve it. And that's enough for Jesse. Walt and Jesse have had a complex relationship with lots of ups and downs. But in the end, Walt came back to save his former partner. So Jesse drives away in his El Camino, a free man. Where's he gonna go? What happens next? Find out in the Breaking Bad sequel movie, El Camino, on Netflix October 11th. But Walt was hit in the big shooting, so as the cops are closing in, he bleeds out, and that's how Breaking Bad comes to an end.